Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're continuing the Ayin. We're in Parshat Yisro. We're going to learn the piece that begins by Yotzei Moshe Sa'an. It's found on Rishon and Dalid. We use the Maduras and Landau. Now, even though this piece is not such a long piece, there's enormous amount of substance, and this is classic Ayin, Shtickle Torah, where he gives us a little bit of Musar in Kedarko Shel the Ayin and Hadrocha in Avodas Hashem. And I think there's a very important limud that we can get from this piece. And Befrat, when I was preparing this piece a few times, each time I gained a little bit more, and I feel that we could continue to gain from this piece. Kedarko of the Ayin, that he's always teaching us many times practical examples or practical ideas on how to improve Avodas Hashem. And the pasuk begins quoting a Gemara. This piece quotes a Gemara on the pasuk Vayotzei Moshe Sa'am v'Yisyatzu Tachas Sahar, that Moshe Rabbeinu brought Klal Yisrael and he placed them under the mountain. The Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifted the mountain over Klal Yisrael and gave them a message. If you accept the Torah, everything will be good. If not, I will drop the mountain on you and Sham Tiei Kvarasam. The famous Gemara, all the Mefarshim talk about it. It's also preparation for Purim, Kimu v'Kiblu, but that is the famous Gemara. Now there's another Gemara, this Oid Gemara, B'Shosh Om Yisrael al Har Sinai, when Klal Yisrael was on Har Sinai, Pasku Zuhamasan. The Zuhamasan that they had ceased to exist. The word Zuhamasan is a Kabbalistic term. It's sometimes used in Hasidic Sforim as well, but it's a Kabbalistic idea that in a person that did an Avera, generally it's a reference, not always, to an Avera that's done with arayos, right, illicit, illegal relationships, that there's tumah that's injected in the individual, or it's absorbed within the individual, until the person does tshuva, kapara, whatever has to be done to remove it, right? Befrat, we're in the last days of Shoivivim, right, one more week left, so this idea is specifically apropos for these times, right? The main examples of Zuhamasam that we know from the Torah is when, according to many Midrashim, the Nachash lived the Naveir with Chava. We know that Avraham Avinu had Sad Rashaboy, the fact that he came from Terach and Amsaloi Bas Karnavoy, and according to the Midrashim, they were born b'shas that the mother was also to Terach, right? And the Mela, Avraham Avinu got married to Hagar, and that Zuhama was passed on to Esav. Yitzchak married Rivka. Rivka had Ra or Zuhamasim from Lavan, that was passed on to Esav until Yaakov was born, and Yaakov had Shiftei Ka. As the Shvatim said, we are fully Kadosh, Shiftei Ka. Hashem put his name to all the Shvatim, as we know from the Parshas, Haruveni, Hashemoni, because everybody in Klal Yisrael kept their halachas of Kedusha. Says, and what happened was when they came to Har Sinai, the Kedusha was so strong, right? Sometimes the Kedusha can be so strong, right, that the Tumah ceased to exist. That's a different parsha, different sugya in and of itself. But Mamela, what do we see from here? That when Klal Yisrael stood at the mountain of Har Sinai, the Kedusha, the Shechina, the revelation of Hashem was so strong that Tumah ceased to exist. However, the Basayan says this doesn't make sense. You just told me two contradictory things. On the one hand, you told me that Klal Yisrael was betach the Sahar, on the bottom of the mountain, and then you told me that they were on the mountain, right? Basayan quoted two Gemaras that said first Klal Yisrael was on the bottom, then they were on the top. L'chayr, it's a stira, zeh v'acha kachamnu, right, as it says, Sh'amnal Har Sinai. Gam kasha kushis toisus. Toisus and Rav Peiches has a kasha. Lam hutzach HaKadosh Baruch Hu lichbaz aleim hakigis. Famous kasha, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to put on them the hakigis? Halayamnu, they already said Nasiv and Ishma. They already said whatever you tell us we're going to do. So Hashem is to say, if you accept the Torah, then it will be good. And if you don't accept the Torah, Sham Tiei Kvarasam, they already said, we will do whatever you tell us. We will do whatever you tell us means whatever you tell me we're going to do. Right? Even according to the Torah, it was only Torah Shebeksav, Torah Shebapeh, doesn't really fit because they didn't say it's conditional. They said, whatever you tell us, we will do. Whatever you tell us means whatever you tell us. So now what's the purpose of lifting the mountains? The third question is a very simple question, a very practical question. How can Klal Yisrael say Nasa before they hear what they're going to tell us? Whoever says to somebody, even if they want to do a favor for somebody, right? You have to hear what the question is. You have to hear what the request is. You have to hear what the person makes demands of you. What if Chas v'Shalom they would have said something that they couldn't have done? So how do you say Nasav Nishma? It's true there are many terutzim, but Ayin, right? The Shivim Panel LaTorah, and Memela, we're going to learn how the Bas Ayin answers these three questions in one explanation, in one beautiful Yisro. Levar calls that to explain all these kashas. Number one, how to explain the contradiction that in one place you told me that the Klai Yisrael was on the bottom of the mountain, and then there's another Gemara that says Klai Yisrael was on the mountain. Number two is once Klai Yisrael said, we will do whatever you tell us. So why does Hashem have to force them? Why does Hashem have to give them a warning? If you don't accept the Torah, I'm going to drop the mountain on you. We already accepted the Torah. We already said whatever you tell us you're going to do. And the third is a practical thing. How could you say we will do whatever you want us to do without knowing what it is you want us to do? Maybe the demand will be so outrageous that you can't do it. Lavar calls that. So to understand this, Nakdim lafarsh mashisa v'gemar. Al pasuk mi minoi eshtas lamai. There's a famous pasuk in the end of Dvarim that says, "For my right hand eshtas lamai shatar nitna esh shachara." That the Torah was given black fire agabe esh lavana, on white fire. Now this is very hard to understand on a very simple level. A lot of explanation are this is the Sefer Torah that we got black ink on the white cloth. But obviously there's a lot more to it, and the Bas Ayin is going to teach us a tremendous idea, a beautiful idea, how to understand black fire and white fire. Parshat Pshat doesn't make sense. The Bas Ayin says, yeah, there's a lot of beautiful Torahs, and they're all true, but let's understand this on a very simple level. What does this mean? So the Bas Ayin says we can understand it in the following way. So the Bas Ayin is going to give us an explanation on this idea first, and then turn around and answer all the three questions that we had. So just keep that in mind, and we're going to go on a little bit of a side tangent to come back to our original three kashas that we had. Everybody knows that there are two types of mitzvahs. There's mitzvah saseh or mitzvah lo saseh. There's a positive mitzvah to put on tefillin, to say birchas Torah, to say birchas hamazon, to learn Torah, to do mitzvahs lulav and sukkah, to give tzedakah, to eat matzah, so on and so forth. There's mitzvahs lo saseh. Right? The Bas Ayin talks about this a lot. Throughout his Torah, he discusses a lot what is the limud of mitzvah saseh, what is the limud of mitzvahs lo saseh. Now, v'hinei ki mitzvah saseh. This is a tremendous idea. Nimshach mebechinas ahava. Mitzvah saseh is an expression of ahavas Hashem. I'm buying a lulav. I'm doing something positive, right? I'm buying kaviyachol. When you buy a gift for somebody, when you buy something for somebody, there's a nekuda of ahava. Why are you buying a gift for somebody? Either you want him to love you on a certain level, to do something for you, or as appreciation for the person doing something for you, you want to buy him a gift, right? There's ahava. You usually buy gifts for someone that you love. That is a concept of mitzvah saseh, right? Now, that's not to say if you don't have a hava of Hashem, chas v'shalom, you're not obligated to do the mitzvahs. Avada, you're doing the mitzvahs. But generally, it's you giving of something to do something. You're doing something, you're doing an actionable thing. Machmas she'oyev es haboy baruch hu, and therefore oisei ritzoni yisbarach. You're doing the will of Hashem. Hashem's will is to do lulav and build a sukkah on Yom Tov of Sukkos, to eat matzah on Yom Tov of Matzah, to eat mara on the Yom Tov of Pesach, right? To put on tefillin every day. Right? Tefillin is a beautiful expression of ahava, right? It's an ois beini v'beneicha. Learning Torah. Torah is one of the most important ways that we show our ahavas Hashem. V'hinei ki mitzvah saseh nimshach bechinas ahava. Machma she'oyev es haboy baruch hu oisei ritzoni yisbarach. U'mitzvahs lo saseh nimshach mebechinas yira sheyarei lavar es ritzoni yisbarach. Mitzvahs lo saseh is don't do this. I'm warning you, don't do this, don't do this. That comes from a level of yira. You don't want to do something to upset somebody because you don't want it to be upset. You're afraid that if they get upset, A, B, C, and D may happen. So that is the concept of mitzvahs lo saseh. And obviously, there's many concepts in the mitzvahs saseh and lo saseh, but this is one of them that the Bas Ayin is teaching us, and he's going to use that as a vehicle to answer and to teach us a Yisro. So Memela, we understand. V'hinei bechinas ahava, bechinas is chesed. We know that ahava is chesed. Right? When you love somebody, you do something for them. Bechinas yira, bechinas gevura. Yira is gevura, strength. Right? When you're a strong person, you're generally afraid of. Bina isa bezayah, a raisa megvura nafkas. The Torah came from gevura. Uve mishlik sev, the opposite. The Torah is chesed, alashayna. The Torah that's chesed is on your lips. So which one is it? Is it gevura? Is it chesed? So the Ayin says, based on what we just explained, we can understand that each one is talking about a different concept. When it says Torah is chesed, refers to mitzvah asay, that Torah is chesed, bahava, and the lois asay is the Torah that's given bigvura. V'hine ki mitzvah asay. Now comes the second yisod that the Ayin teaches us. And this is a very important yisod. When a person does a mitzvah asay, hu bechinas hamshachas hakedusha. A person is drawing down kedusha into this world, onto him. Right? When a person is about to do a mitzvah, right, as it's brought down in all the Psalm, even in the Nefesh HaChaim, specifically when he starts making a bracha, when he starts a bracha and he starts the word Baruch, somehow it activates this channel and brings kedusha on a person. Why? Because he's doing an actionable thing. When a person puts on tefillin, he makes a bracha and he puts the tefillin, there's kedusha on him. When a person is learning Torah, there's kedusha on him. That's called hamshachas kedusha. Hainu keshemekai mitzvah achas mitzvah Hashem mamshich Allah kedusha elyoina. You should understand there's a tremendous yisoid. When a person, for example, is benching, right? Benching birchas hamazon is a mitzvah d'oraisa. When a person does a mitzvah d'oraisa, there's now kedusha on him. There's an important time. He's supposed to act in a certain way, right? Because he's bringing kedusha on. A person puts on tefillin, there's kedusha on him. When he's learning Torah, there's tremendous kedusha on him. And when he's over chas v'shalom mitzvahs loisasei, poigim chas v'shalom b'kedusha l'yayna. He's damaging the upper levels of kedusha. Now comes the Ayin teaches a very important rule. That's a very important yisod in Chassidus. It's impossible l'kayim shemitzvahs memitzvahs Hashem k'dei lahamshach kedusha l'yayna al gufay imlo shenizar mekodim shalei lavar al ritzon yizvarach ma'ashav v'dibur ma'asa. You can't do a mitzvah saseh to bring kedusha on you if you're not careful on not doing mitzvahs like saseh. Vasarna says, can it make sense? How could you bring kedusha on the one hand on you, and on the other hand, you're paigim Hashem, you're damaging kedusha? It doesn't make sense. They're two conflicting things. And that's why it's brought down in the Svarim, it's brought down in Nefesh HaChaim, before you learn Torah, we should do tshuva, right? Many Chassidim and Anshe Maaseh go to the mikveh beforehand, many times before any tzaddikim do a mitzvah. They have a little bit of machshava, I'm going to do a mitzvah, please forgive me for any avers that I may have done, right? They befrat before other mitzvahs, they're very careful, there's an extra level of zahirus, and if they think there's anything that they did wrong, they try to do tshuva. Why? Because there's a problem that if you're in tumah, if you're doing an avera, right, you cannot properly bring down kedusha on you. Now again, to point out, if chas v'shalom, a person is doing something wrong, he's still obligated to put on tefillin every day. There's still a commandment to put on every day. What we're talking about is that bringing down the kedusha on a person becomes a problem. Therefore, a person has to always do tshuva. This is a nefesh chaim. This is, as they say, from all sugei yahados, the bet is always to do tshuva. Right? Memela, if a person does tshuva beforehand, it allows the kedusha to rest on the person much better. Right? This is the concept of sur meirav asay toiv. First thing is stop doing bad. Then do good. It'll be much easier to do good if you first stop doing bad. Again, it's true, like we mentioned before, that if a person is chas v'shalom, in a matzav of he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, doesn't mean he shouldn't be learning. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't putting on tefillin and tzitzis. Hopefully the mitzvah will be goreres mitzvah. But the point is that to do it in the right way, you have to first do and make sure you're not doing the lois asayis. Then you do asayis. V'hine b'chinas shchoyer al b'chinas gevura. Right? That is up until now mitzvahs asay. Mitzvahs asay, which is chesed, which is lavan, which is bringing down kedusha on a person. Now lois asay is shchoyer, is black, is gevura. The lavan hu b'chinas chesed. And now we understand, says Ayin, what does the pasuk teach us Shatori nitna eish shechoira, that Torah was given a black fire. The black fire was first, as the pasuk brings it down first, is the mitzvahs loisaseh. Shemaram is al bechinas gevura, meram is al mitzvahs loisaseh. Al gabe eish levana, on top of the eish levana, shemaram is al bechinas chesed. Bechinas mitzvahs aseh. Hainu, which means shemikoidim tzarich lizar mel'ava mitzvahs loisaseh machshava dibur u'maaseh. The first thing you have to do is the eish shechoira, the mitzvahs loisaseh. Be careful to speak properly, to think properly, and to do things properly, right? Don't do the wrong things. When you don't do the wrong things, then to draw down the kedusha on a person, right? Which is what we explained, that it's impossible or extremely difficult, or it causes corruption or problems if when you're doing a mitzvah aseh and you're trying to bring down kedusha on the person and you're doing averos. Becomes an issue, and therefore, like we mentioned, it's important to do tshuva beforehand, to be careful, dibur machshava ma'isa, before the Yom Tovim. There's an extra level of zehirus that people take upon themselves to be careful. That's why we said Chasidim, Anshe Ma'isa, many tzaddikim, they will go to the mikveh in the morning, right? The Arachaim will go to the mikveh multiple times during the day, right? All the tzaddikim would go to the mikveh if they felt that there was some sort of blockage in their learning. They would go to the mikveh, right? We know famous stories of tzaddikim. They would daven, they would cry, they would put tzedakah in the pushka to daven to Hashem to forgive them and open their eyes so they can understand the Gemara. And Memela, that is the concept of eish shechoira al eish levayna. The eish shechoira is the mitzvah loisaseh. On top of has to be the ikar. Then you can have the eish levayna, the mitzvahs aseh. V'achakach yuchal l'kayim mitzvah aseh lahamshich hakdusha helyana. V'inei mitzvahs aseh nikras asiyah. Mitzvahs aseh are actionable mitzvahs, like we explained. Mitzvahs loisaseh nikras shmiyah. Right? Why is mitzvah loisaseh called listening? Because you're listening what not to do. Everybody understands. Don't do this on Shabbos. So I'm listening and I'm not doing anything. Mitzvahs aseh is doing something. Right? That's a major yisod here, which now the Basayin is going to start to build to answer the three questions that we had. So again, v'hine. So again, let's just repeat this last line. V'hine mitzvahs aseh nikra asiyah. Mitzvahs aseh is called doing. Mitzvahs aseh nikra shmiyah. Sheshameya umekayem mitzvahs Hashem. Not really doing anything. You're just not doing something, right? That's the yisod. V'hine misha nekayem mitzvahs aseh mamshech alas mekedusha al-yana. Zeh ha-bechinat kedusha shemamshech alav hu yoyse b'malam ha'shras al-kedusha. Now you have to understand, says the Basayin, when a person is mekayim a mitzvah aseh, and it brings on him kedusha from the upper orlamus, this bechina, this kedusha is higher and stronger than what was found on Har Sinai when Klal Yisrael accepted Torah. As far as and it makes sense, says the Basayin. Shashras kedusha shal Har Sinai ikar mechuvim b'shel Yisrael. Am kodesh yikayim mitzvah aseh v'yamshich al kedusha al-yana. Mustam ze yosef b'malam kedusha Har Sinai. That the kedusha that was on Har Sinai, right, was greater, right, than the kedusha that was there when they got closer to Har Sinai. Right, which we understand when we're accepting the Torah. Sheikaimu mitzvah, right, which means when we went on the Torah, when we went on Har Sinai, we got the mitzvah, we got the Torah, the Aseres HaDibros. And Aseres HaDibros are mitzvahs aseh and mitzvahs lois aseh. That kedusha is a much higher level than when we were on the bottom of the mountain, right, getting ready to accept the Torah. Now what happens if a person doesn't do averos, but he doesn't do mitzvahs, he doesn't do averos? That's the person on the bottom of the mountain. He's neither here nor there. On Har Sinai, it's kedusha. On this person who's not doing mitzvahs, there's no kedusha. However, but he's not even poigim, so he's basically in no man's land. So now, based on these concepts, that we have mitzvahs aseh that brings the kedusha in a person. Mitzvahs lois aseh prevents the kedusha from being corrupted. When we bring down mitzvahs aseh, when we do mitzvahs aseh, we bring kedusha. It's an extremely high level. With that idea, v'hine Yisrael yotzu miMitzrayim mokam atuma. When Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, the deepest place of Tumah, nichsava v'kolsam nafsham lebchinas amshachas kedusha al yoyin al gufam v'nafsham adekim mitzvah. Klal Yisrael desired and yearned to do mitzvah aseh, to bring kedusha upon them. That was a way to be davik to Hashem, right? Lias bechinas gedoyla umala yoysa megdulas kedushas hasinai, more than the kedusha that's found in Hasinai, because by doing mitzvahs aseh, you bring tremendous kedusha on a person. However, says the problem, that was impossible to get to that level, says the Basayin, until they were mitahar their bodies, as we explained. So first they had to start on the bottom. The bottom was we're not doing good yet, we're not doing bad. And as a side note, this is why Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us the mon to be mitahar, to start the process of being mitahar the guf. So now Klal Yisrael first came to the bottom of the mountain. The bottom of the mountain, we explained, is a person that while he doesn't do mitzvahs, he doesn't do averos. So now he's no longer being poigim and damaging the kedusha. Now he can get to the level that's on top of Hasinai. That's what it means when they were on Hasinai. So Vasayin says, besides the fact it means that they were physically first on the bottom and then physically on Hasinai, it's also coming to teach us two things. The first Klal Yisrael had to get on the level that they're on the bottom of the mountain. They're not doing good yet, but they're no longer doing bad. Once they got to that level, they now can go up the level to get the Torah, to get the ability to do mitzvahs aseh, to bring kedusha upon them. So that's what he's saying. V'zehu b'shosh omnu al hasinai lios v'chinas al hasinai. The concept of being on hasinai, how yoyser b'malam hasinai should take it from miyad, and once they got to that level, paska zu hamasan. Afa pishi yev shel l'tchila v'teka hamshachas kedusha. Afa b'kein paska zu hamasan. Aval la'emes haye v'siyatzu b'tach d'sahara. Shekaf alem hakegigas. Why? Lios mitchila b'chinas lamata mihasinai. Lios zohir mitchila. First Hashem wanted to tell us, not that if you don't accept the Torah, that you're going to be killed and Shem take rasam. Rather, I'm teaching you that you have to have a concept of being betach Sahara, not to do averos. Lamata me'asina li'ez zohir mitchila mikol shin sam echei lo yisasei v'machshov v'dira ma'isa. Once you understand this concept, says the Basayin, not to do averos, now you can accept the Torah. It's not that if you don't accept the Torah, I'm going to kill you. What the Basayin is teaching us, that Hashem is telling Klal Yisrael, I'm putting you on the bottom. Why am I putting you on the bottom? That first you have to understand not to do averos. That's the bottom level. The minimum you have to understand is you're on the bottom, right? Before you get to the top, you have to start on the bottom. You're not doing any averos. Now that you understand and you got to love, you're not doing any averos, now you can do l'kaim ramach mitzvahs aseh kedei lahamshech hakdush al yonah. L'fi zeh nicha ma shekaf aleim hakigiyas al yomer nasav nishma. They first said we will do and then we will hear. Vasayin says that doesn't make sense. As we just explained, you can't do mitzvahs aseh before you do the loisa, before you are careful in the loisa says, right? But Klal Yisrael wanted the opposite. Klal Yisrael wanted to bring the kedusha like we explained first, and then they will stop doing the averos. That's nasa. We will do mitzvahs aseh, and then nishma. We will not do the mitzvahs loisa says. The Vasayin says that doesn't work. Really, which is now obviously the reason they said it is to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are yours. Whatever you tell us to do, we're going to do, which is the highest level. But on the other hand, the Basayin says on a practical level, from going from level to level, it doesn't work. So Hashem didn't want to chas v'shalom take that schus away. So what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did was He put the har on top of them. Therefore, to tell us that first we're on the bottom, first we're not going to do averos. Then we're going to do the mitzvahs aseh. Then we could do mamshich the kedusha yoyna. So with this concept, the Basayin explains all the psukim. That first taka we were on the bottom of the mountain, which means first we took upon ourselves when HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the har over us to stop doing averos. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us on the mountains in order to bring the kedusha upon us. Why did Hashem have to do this? Because when we left Mitzrayim, we so much wanted to do mitzvahs aseh, to bring kedusha on us, because we were on the lowest levels of Tumah Mitzrayim, that we were ready to do mitzvahs, right? But Hashem said, you're not ready to do mitzvahs. But we wanted so much to do mitzvahs, to bring kedusha upon ourselves, to be dovuk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Klal Yisrael first said, Nasa, we're going to do the mitzvahs aseh. We want to love you, Hashem. We desire to love you. We desire to come close to you. And then we won't do Averis. But first we want to do the mitzvahs. Hashem said it doesn't work that way. In order to bring Kedusha upon a person, he first has to stop doing Averis. When he stops doing Averis, then he can bring Kedusha upon him. So these concepts we can understand the importance of doing mitzvah saseh, what it does. We mamish bring Kedusha upon ourselves. But in order to do that, we first always have to do tshuva. We constantly have to be in a mindset of not doing Averis, b'dibur, machshava, ma'isa, to do tshuva. As we brought down from the Nefesh HaChaim, it's always kedai to do tshuva before a person learns Torah. Anshe ma'isa, go to the mikvah. When Yom Tovim come up, people are more zahir to be careful, and also to learn about what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, and the Mele through that can bring tremendous Kedusha upon us. The Ayin says even higher level than it was found on Har Sinai. Amen. Ki ratzon sheniskel is it. Amen. Ken ratzon.